Good morning. It is 9 o'clock on Friday, November 21st. We are going to call the board meeting of the CMHOC to order. And the invocation today will be provided by Director Bunsey.
Shall we pray? Father God, just thank you so much for this morning. Thank you that we can come together and just talk about the very special people of Ottawa County that you have tasked us to just to help provide and assist. Lord, thank you for your unconditional love and your grace and the provision that you just abundantly flow upon all of us, Lord. We just thank you so much for that. Lord, please bless this meeting, be with our words and all that we learn today. In your most precious name, amen.
Amen. If you're able to rise, please join us with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We call your attention to our mission and vision statement, which is included in the minutes package. It's something we take very close to our hearts and are thankful for an opportunity to serve in making that happen. We'll open the floor for public comments.
Good morning, Barbara Lee from the City of Grand Haven and the Momentum Center. Just want to make sure you're aware of a variety of things going on at the Momentum Center. First of all, this Friday, well, tonight, it's Friday, isn't it? Tonight, we have the first of our free food Fridays. So in response to the food insecurity that so many people are experiencing, we are offering a free hot meal every Friday night. And this is at our Grand Haven location. We have a sponsor who's underwriting that. We're looking for volunteers to help with that. And we'll continue to have our movie the second Friday of every month, but the free meal is open to anybody. And it's a meal, not just food, because that also includes community. We need both. We also have our next town hall on December 1st. The focus is on mental health practices. So it's an opportunity for people to learn about different ways to take care of their mental health, especially as we go into the holidays, things that can work in complements with clinical care or for folks that just need some grounding. So that'll be at 6 o'clock at the Grand Haven location. And many of our well-being collective practitioners will be on the panel for that conversation. And then on December 3rd, we are going to have learning and listening sessions around the Friendship Bench pilot. So an opportunity for us to engage in the public, explaining exactly what's going to happen with the Friendship Benches, especially as we begin recruiting volunteer bench buddies and identify locations to place those benches, and a chance for us to get feedback from the community on where they see the greatest needs for that kind of intervention to be. So those will be in Grand Haven, December 3rd at 8 a.m., 12 noon, and 6 p.m. So I invite you to come to one of those and learn more about the Friendship Benches yourselves. Also, just want to mention that we continue to look for a New Holland location. Last information we have from Max Transit is that that bus route will stop going there in the spring. So it's critical we find a place where our people can get to us. Thank you for helping us create a community where every person is fully visible and connected.
Barbara Lee, you might want to contact the Macatawa Area Coordinating Council, which works very closely with Max Transit, and let them know of your concerns about eliminating that bus route and the need to then relocate your facility. That sounds like it'd be an appropriate thing to consider.
Okay, I will be happy to reach out. We've had some interactions with them in the past that have been very positive. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, Krista Mason with Benjamin's Hope. I would like to share with you remarks that I shared with the Finance Committee earlier this week and also at the LRE board meeting on Wednesday. I would like to address specifically our residential services for our Ottawa consumers and the present reality that we are navigating. As you know, presently we serve 34 individuals, mostly from our region, 16 from Ottawa. And soon, with the opening of 2 new homes, we will be serving 19 Ottawa residents, which takes us up to a total of 44. Since 2018, our labor costs have risen by 70%. And since 2018, Benjamin's Hope has received no rate increase from Ottawa County CMH. Instead, millage funds have been used to stabilize providers and address the growing gap. Recently, we've been informed that we will no longer receive millage funds. Dr. Bashirs and his team have engaged in robust conversation with providers to understand our current fiscal reality related to the discontinuation of millage funds, our stagnant rates, and the rising cost of business. Discussion of appropriate rates based on medical necessity, scope, duration, and intensity have occurred. However, to date, no rate increase has actually occurred. If rates remain unchanged and we would lose millage funds, Benjamin's Hope is facing a $370,000 reduction in revenue. This represents a 23% reduction for funding for our current residents of Ottawa County. This is an unsustainable reduction for us. The mandate that governs our work together from the Michigan Mental Health Code requires that priority be given to individuals with the most severe forms of serious mental illness and developmental disability. I would like you to understand the gravity of our reality today. I have been asked to consider how many and which residents I can no longer afford to serve from Ottawa County. To slow the financial bleed, I would need to discharge Ottawa residents who require the most care and replace them with individuals from counties who are able to pay an appropriate rate. This is an awful consideration. The people who live at Ben's Hope are precisely the population the state requires us to prioritize. The placement should not be in jeopardy because Ottawa is the county of fiscal responsibility. I'm asking you, this board, as I've asked the LRE, to grapple with the question that I've been asked to confront. How, under these conditions, do you propose that we uphold the state's mandate to prioritize the needs of those with the most serious need? Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. Just as a point of additional information, since you made this presentation to the Finance Committee, I'll ask the same question that I asked at the Finance Committee. You have a recent placement of a consumer from Ottawa County. And that's at a new higher rate, is it not?
That's correct. In fact, we'll be serving several new residents from Ottawa County, and their rates are appropriate.
Yep. So the dilemma is we have new placements at an appropriate rate, and we have a lot of existing placements that are disadvantaged financially in terms of the covering their costs.
That's correct. Thank you.
Can I just follow up on that? And how many of those then are disadvantaged because of prior costs?
16.
16?
Mhm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody online? No question. Okay. With that, we will move to the approval of today's agenda. There's a suggested motion in your packet.
So moved. Support.
Moved and supported. Any comments or requested changes to the agenda? If not, please vote your approval by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign for those who oppose. There being none, the motion passes. Michael, it's your report.
Yes, I just sent around a handout that's part of my report.
And if there's any extra copies, if you could just put it there, that way if the public wanted to grab one, they could. You also received this via email about 8:30. So what I want to do is update you on a couple of things. First, some regular updates that are not part of this document. First, the first one is the PHP restructuring plan at the state, just give you an update. As you know, that there's going to be, and I've said this before, a court hearing in December. I think there's 2 dates now. There's actually going to do it over 2 days, I found out, the 8th and the 9th. And it's expected that a judge on the 10th of December is going to give feedback to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services on their ability to continue with the RFP process. What has already been decided is that the state has every right to say how many PHPs are going to be. That's not in the question. So we've already had a ruling by this judge to say, yes, the state can indeed determine the number of PHPs and who they can be, from 10 to 3 to 1 to 11. That's no longer in debate. What's in debate still is the role and function of the CMH as part of the new configuration and our ability to meet our mandated code services as a CMH. As you're aware, and the public's aware, CMHs are in the mental health code and have to exist. So what's really being decided upon now is, in this new configuration, are we merely a service provider, meaning that we would just provide Medicaid services, or would we indeed co-manage the Medicaid benefit like we do now with the new region? That is yet still to be determined. So why have this by the 10th of December? Why that date? Well, the reason is the state's supposed to, it's not the whole state, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services is supposed to release on the 10th who they're selecting to run the 3 regions that they've proposed. So the judge felt like he needed, it is a he in this case, to rule on this to help with that process. My personal belief is that there'll be some changes in the current way that the state MDHHS has figured out how they're going to do this, but I do anticipate there will be a change in the number and who is managing the Medicaid. What's left still, in my opinion, is the role and function of the CMH in that new model. So we should know more about that then, and every time I tell you that, a new date pops up. Oh, we should know about this date, this date. But I'm anticipating, based on the state's stated timeline, they would have to move on this pretty quickly, because if you're following and remembering the timeline, they would have to have the person selected and begin transition in February of 2026, months away. That would give all the way until 9/30, not a big transition period, to transition from the current PHP system to a new one. And then starting on 10/1/26, a new arrangement will be there. I'll obviously keep the community, the board, the county employees up to date with any information. But right now, we're just kind of like waiting to see what happens. I don't believe, unless others may know, there's been any significant change other than what I just said. We're kind of waiting. We don't even have a list of people that we know have applied to be the region, the new regional entities. So keeping you posted on that end. I will say it makes our current relationship within our current region, Lakeshore Regional entity, somewhat difficult. What do you do together, knowing this could be the last year you're in existence? I've been very happy and very proud of the current LRE leadership saying, until we're told we're not doing it, we're doing it. Full steam ahead. So they have been able to maintain integrity, saying, gee, with all this change, we're still going to move forward on things that we need to get done. But if you're asking me my personal opinion on what's going to happen, there'll be a change one way or number of the reforms within the current system and a change in who's managing it. So just an update on that front.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
So my understanding was that at some point, this change would go to the federal level for approval. Is
Mhm.
that still a step? in
Yeah,
the
what would
process?
happen is, once the state releases the RFP, once they pick, they would have to go to CMS to approve the new structure. Now, I will tell you, they've never denied that.
Mhm.
Federal government's not, is going to say, well, this is what you're saying you're doing. Can you meet all the obligations of the Medicaid contract? And so the federal government, I think wisely, has never told the state how specifically to do that.
Mhm.
So I would anticipate if that happens, if there is a change, that it would, I'd be hard pressed to see that the federal government would say you can't do that. They allow you to kind of structure that. But that is true. That is a step that has to happen for our waiver programs.
When do you think that will happen?
That would have to happen pretty quickly. They would have, so once it's decided how it's going to happen, who got it, then it goes to the feds. And I'm sure they're, CMS. I'm sure they're already aware of the RFP, and I'm sure the CMS is already aware of the department's desired change. But it's not I don't have any information to suggest that there's any approval. Also, the federal government CMS has not told us we have to change. That was some information that was out there that we somehow were told, oh, you got to do this. That is not the case in writing or any formal notification. But the state of Michigan has every right to set its structure. And, these are the people that are in charge of that. There are probably variables I have no idea about that they're dealing with. All I can tell you is to talk about the impact to us, the community, and the system as I know it. But, I can get pretty vocal, as you know, but the reality is I have no idea of all the variables associated with the decisions being made there, or am I privy to them? But I will keep on top of it and be clear we understand the impact. But that's where we are now with it.
Okay.
Mike, as a follow-up to
Sure.
Sylvia's question. Our existing programs are technically waivers that CMS has granted to Michigan to
Correct, on the
implement its-
Medicaid side. Mhm.
Yep. Presumably, Michigan will have to go back and modify its waivers.
Mhm.
Is that going to be an open process where we are able to comment? And
Sure.
Is there a plan for anyone or the state association to file objections to that?
Yeah, you can't file objections till the thing is known what's going to happen. So it's early in the process, even though the timetable of transition is different, from one PHP to a different model. I will say there are no plan, to my knowledge, there are no plan in the actual service delivery aspect of the waivers, like no benefits being changed. And that's usually when you have a lot of public comment. The structural changes and how it's managed, I'm not so sure, Chairman Board, how that's handled, but I'll find out. But just so the public knows, I'm not aware of any potential changes to the actual service delivery and entitlements of Medicaid beneficiaries in the waiver program, just how it's managed. And so, yes, I would imagine once it becomes clear and these court decisions have happened, that CMS would do its usual process of allowing that, and the state would too for comments. But it wouldn't change, because this is an RFP process of who's managing it. It's not the traditional way that you would normally have, like open comment and feedback to the federal government. It's a contractual issue within the state of Michigan.
And my understanding is CMS has approved Michigan's plan for waivers subject to having the finances flow through a PIHP.
Correct.
In the past, there were many PIHPs. We were a PIHP with Muskegon at
Yeah,
one
there were
time.
18, then now 10. Mhm.
But are you aware, is there a requirement for a number, or is it simply a PIHP and the state could simply say, we're going to have one PIHP
They
to
could do
comply
any
with
of that.
CMS?
Yeah, they could do anything. They could have zero.
Well, could we have zero, or is there?
Could. That was the state of the union from before 2001. Every CMH was a PHP and a CMH. Now, there's a desire, there is a strong desire based on legitimate concerns of conflict of interest when you go back to a no PHP model. But clearly our current PHP model, regardless of the strengths that I see in it, needs reform. Now, do I think it needs to be reformed in the way that's being suggested by the state? No. But there are concerns about equity and about consistent rates across the state and about it shouldn't matter where you live for the Medicaid benefit that we as a system have not been able to resolve. And so regardless of what happens, we have to resolve those issues. Like you're going to hear in a moment about our budget and some of the budget issues we have is that not all Medicaid payments are created equal in this state. And that is not fair to Ottawa County and counties like us. We get less per person for a variety of reasons, DABs and TANFs and all of these other combinations of Medicaid than anybody else in our region in terms of Medicaid funding. So there's a reform that needs to happen. You know, I'm all for reform. Let's just do it without destroying the system. And so we will wait and see what ultimately ends. I think I've done a good job forecasting the potential issues, but now I'm waiting to what's going to actually happen so I know what the real impact is. But I have been alerting this community for several months of potential major issues. And now I'm sitting back and I'm going, all right, I've already done an analysis of what could happen, what's going to happen, and now let's get to the business of letting know people the impact.
Now, you used the phrase earlier, we would be merely a service provider.
Of Medicaid.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Technically, are we not a CMHSP?
We are.
Is there a distinction there, or is it just semantics?
It's semantics. Mhm. CMHSP is only defined as a CMH in the mental health code. So they put that title on there, but if the state of Michigan changed that definition, by the way, of a CMHSP to include any provider of behavioral health, then large networks would be able to have the same role and function as CMH. So it's deliberately put that way in the mental health code. And they use the word CMHSP. And it's defined as a CMH. The definition is really community mental health, organized in certain ways, but.
Any other questions on this topic?
I'll have some more comments during commissioner comments about the LRA meeting this week.
So if it's okay, I'd like to put your attention, and I called it FY 2025 Budget Deficit Analysis. Now, why am I doing this? We have a finance committee. Well, when I presented these issues at the finance committee, I said, I would like to have the opportunity to go through this type of document for the full board. So it spares the finance committee chair of having to do that during the finance committee consent agenda. And they agreed as a finance committee. So in your finance committee kind of like consent agenda, you'll see there were changes in our financials. And some of it was related to the fiscal year 2025 deficit, anticipated deficit. And so what I'd like to walk through is a couple of things related to that. And I'll let you know, this is changing daily. How I write this document last week is different than how I wrote it this morning due to stuff yesterday. It's a moving target. The bottom line, and I still have to manage it, it is very difficult for any CMH, and especially in this region, to anticipate both revenues and expenditures. These are the two basic elements of budget management, right? How much money you got coming in, how much you're spending. We have issues on both sides of the ledger that make it difficult to predict our deficit. All year, I've been saying that we're going to have between a 1.5 to, we even said, look, we're going to even look worst case scenario, $3 million type of problem. Remember last year we had a 5. We made some progress on that. I'm going to go through some of those elements, some things that we put in place. Well, we also found out in the end, like in November, I don't like the month of November anymore, 2 years in a row. Our fiscal year ends at 9/30, so you get a lot of stuff that comes in the month of October that you allocate, and we still do, by the way. And we'll still have expenditures going out for last fiscal year all the way through the winter. And we never really cost settle our budget until January or February with the LRE. So what's going on now is it was reported to us in 2025 that the estimated Medicaid revenue that we projected with the region projected for us is actually going to be down 2.8 million. So right off the bat, your $3 million deficit climbs up over 5, right? I'll let the board and the public know we're still finalizing all of these numbers. There's nothing we have at Ottawa County said you need to demonstrate to us how you're projecting revenue, how we could, at the end of the fiscal year, like a month later, have a different projection. When we've had projections all year, every month, that it's a moving target based on Medicaid lives and the rates increasing and not increasing for CMH. And so that is one of the major levers on why our year end looks different than what we reported last month. We found this out on October 31st. And actually in November, we had a discussion with the region. The region has acknowledged that we have to reevaluate the methodology on how we predict revenue in the region from the state. And they have acknowledged it's been very difficult to be on target. And we've seen large swings in the reporting. Network 180 had a huge swing, like $8 million projected and then not getting. So when you're seeing revenue projections swing like that, and it's not the fault of the regional entity, they're literally getting the information and trying to make sense of it from the state. We have to come up with a better forecasting model there. And it's one of the reasons why, you know, when we look at that FSR, that financial statement we send to the region and we keep giving you caveats every month of, well, it's 2 months behind or a month behind, or it's not really accurate. And you as a board are like, oh, I guess I'm just approving receipt of the thing, that we got the thing. And yeah, that's about right. We also had continued growth in certain areas that we've been working on for the last year based on the client care side. And so I'm just kind of summarizing this document narratively instead of walking you through point by point, because I know all of you can read, okay? And so we still see on the client care side, these are things that are not in our control. These are medically necessary services based on established criteria and costing associated with them. And we still see a continued growth in autism and community living supports for both developmentally disability and mental health. And inpatient hospitalization continues to be different than what we had budgeted and what we were seeing. And I'm going to go through something related to that in a moment that's in your handout. We keep seeing that in autism, specialized residential services, inpatient services, CLS are the primary drivers, but not the only drivers of increased expenditures more than we had expected. In fact, in your table, if you could scroll down a little bit so that people are watching home, this comparison is going to be a little confusing until I tell you. What you're looking at is expenditures booked and finance, if I get this wrong, jump in, okay? Booked in September. And on average, we average around those amounts you see in September for each of those categories to the right. DD contract is our CLS, a lot of our CLS services are in there, and all of our independent facilitation or self-directed care expenditures are in there as well. And you'll notice from September to October, there's a huge jump, like an $11 million jump. That means on average every month, you have really what September kind of looks like. And then what happened is year end comes, September 30, everybody is sending invoices. They can't send them from a year ago. It's within a time period. And then all of a sudden, you had a gigantic increase in booked or paid out or expenditures for those items. And this is problematic because we didn't forecast it. We didn't even know as a CMH, by the way, none of our regional partners have the report I'm going to say we're developing right now. We didn't even know the amount of services authorized in the system by units, like, hey, we got 100 more of these things to do. What's the associated cost with that and how that projects to expenditure forecasting? Our expenditure forecasting has been primarily, but not only, based on what's been paid out. And this is a fundamental problem of forecasting. So every month when we're coming with you, we're saying we're in our allocated expense budgets based on what we historically have spent those months over a several year period. But we weren't capturing the basic element of expenditure forecasting based on authorizations. And what I mean by that is if somebody has like 100 units of CLS and there's an increase to say 200 for whatever reason, changes in medical condition or whatever, we weren't capturing that increase in our expenditure forecasting at all. This is a fundamental flaw to run your business. So you have you have forecasting on authorizations, but then simultaneously you have to measure of that authorization, how much was actually utilized. So if I have an authorization of 100 units, but we're seeing that only 80 are being utilized through the year, what happens to that 20, right? That gives you a better sense of where you're trending on actual expenditures and authorization. And then finally, you have what was paid out, what was actually received and paid out. And so over time, you want all three of those lines to converge. You can make changes to the forecasting quarterly instead of, this will be the second year in a row, my first full fiscal year, but I was here at the end of last one, where in November, we come up with the November surprise of an increase in expenditures that were unanticipated. We thought we had some more controls put in place this year on that, and some of them I'm going to go over, but we actually need that financial report. We put in a new system in June, it went live. Auto, right, PCE. PCE does the financial stuff and all kinds of stuff, in addition to our other systems for all the CMHs except for the one in Lansing. There's the last holdout. They didn't even have a report anywhere in their system that does that. None of our partners do. We will have one in 30 days. I have contracted with IBH, working with fiscal services and the leadership team, to find a way to use our data to forecast that. So our expenditure forecasting will be based on authorizations, and then how much of those are utilized, and then how much we actually paid out. This has to be done so that we get accurate forecasting on our expenditure side, things we can control, the forecasting of it. We've put in a lot of controls to look in. I'll go over some of them of how we control the benefit, how do we do utilization management, some of the things we put in place to control cost. But on the expenditure side, if we don't develop this, I mean now, then this board has a right every single year to look at me and say, do you have any idea what our expenditures are going to be? Because every year we're dealing with this issue. And a lot of it is because in years past, if you had enough Medicaid, so it was a huge increase in Medicaid revenue because of COVID and more people were eligible, it can kind of mask this need. You're like, oh, look, our revenue is going to exceed our expenditures. We're okay. We're doing great. But since 2022, we've started seeing this change, right? That's when a lot of the the health emergency stuff started to settle. 2023 even more. The number of Medicaid lives are decreasing in our county, but our ability to forecast expenditures has to change now, because as the CEO, you always have to take full responsibility of things like this. We have not been able to provide you accurate expenditure forecasting because of this flaw. It will be remedied. I intend to show a draft of this report in December. The Finance Committee and the full board will have a working model on how we're doing it. You would think it's easy to do. It's extremely complicated, hence why no one has such a report, which if you run a business, you're like, how do you not have this report? There are hundreds of thousands of Medicaid, not hundreds of thousands, I'm exaggerating. There's hundreds of Medicaid service codes and authorization limits, and some are authorized weekly, some are authorized daily, some are authorized units annually, some monthly. pulling all that together and understanding what's been authorized and what those costs associated with them are is one of the biggest reporting improvements we need immediately. That way, you know, when you're looking at the red on this thing in October, oh yeah, we anticipated some of that because we already had those services authorized and the cost associated. In fact, we'd be saying to folks, why haven't you, are you going to send in your bills or what? Because we haven't, and I know Nicholas does this in finance all the time, we haven't received invoices from certain people. But we have to be on offense and not defense on the expenditure side. So before I get to revenue and things we've been doing, any questions on what I'm saying thus far? Oh, by the way, we're anticipating that all of our deficit would be covered still by the internal service fund at the region. That is something we will cost settle. It's not going to result in local or any type of cut to solve that, but we have to get to the root of the problem because you can only do this 4 million, 5 million, or Network 180's case and others like 10 million, 12 million, so long before you run out of the rainy day fund, the ISF. So just because the money's there, you still have to solve the root causes, get more revenue for the region and things like that. Or you just can't repeat this over and over and over again. Sooner or later, you run out of the money, right? And I anticipate that the ISF, maybe not this fiscal year, but the end of the next fiscal year, at the current trends, we'd have an issue as a region to fund any deficit.
You asked if there were questions.
Yeah, please.
I just was thinking about, I know that during the health crisis and the subsequent years, we were looking at a whole different financial picture.
Correct.
Prior to that, did you look at historical data? And did that give us some type of a percentage or something that would tell us that this has happened for a lot of years? What did you learn
Well,
from that?
I'm still concluding that analysis, but what I know now is you got to remember how the money within our own region is distributed changed and was finalized in 2022. So before the pandemic, there was a period of time where our estimated Medicaid need was based on the need of our clients and their cost and eligibles per month, right? So it was called like a hybrid model. Back in the old days, when the region first just started in 2013, it was 100% historically, what did Ottawa need to meet the financial need of the 8% of the people that we're serving. Over time, that switched away from a needs-based model to a per month, per eligible model alone. And that was finalized in 2022. And it's exactly when, unfortunately, the health emergency ended, Medicaid standards were changed a little bit, and how Medicaid within our region changed. So some of that revenue was shifted to other members. And the two members that got hurt were Kent County and Ottawa County, who from 2022 have demonstrated we don't have enough Medicaid revenue to cover the needs of the 8% that we're dealing with. So historically, this issue hasn't, like Chairman Byrd mentioned, the previous affiliation when I was here the first time. It was just us and Muskegon. There were 18 PHPs. And we would literally sit down quarterly, John North, who ran that one, and me, and say, what do you need? We'd shift Medicaid around, and even general fund. And we could do it because we were kind of both county departments. We had like service arrays, and you could manage it. We'd go to 10, and you're adding Network 180 and the other folks in there. In 2013, I was here at the beginning of that. I helped write and design the first of the current model. And you've seen a change that concluded in 2022 on how Medicaid is distributed in our region. As Director Davis is going to mention in his comments at the LRE meeting, that was brought up. And it was brought up that there needs to be a fundamental analysis to move us back to needs-based, meaning what are the true costs of the people that you're serving and not base it solely on Medicaid lives for our region. And that is something that the regional entity director said to the board, I can do that. We can look into that. Network 180, and of course, I was advocating for that. The other CMHs that have been, if you have winners or losers in this, I don't know what to call, didn't have a negative impact of the change. They did not object to us examining going back to a needs-based model. Because on the revenue side, if you tell us after the year end, we're getting $2.8 million less in expected revenue finally, then how do you manage anything? And so some of the issues, the amount of Medicaid we're getting from the state for our region, but some of the issue is how revenue is distributed within our region. And I just happen to be the director that started at the end of one model and into another, and it's having an impact on us. And in years past, if there were adequate Medicaid to cover it, we didn't think we needed the same financial reporting because we're like, okay, we don't have to get that specific. And in fact, it's very complicated, hence why nobody has such a report. But you've got to have the same reaction I have of like, well, that's like a basic thing to know, right? Did I answer your question? And so historically, there's been many different ways that Medicaid's been sent to us. And so it's not apples to apples. It's sometimes an apple to a wrench, unfortunately. And so it's trying to figure out what's the state of the union now and then how you fix it.
I may be over my skis with this question, so we're relying on the internal service fund to make us whole.
Correct, on the Medicaid side.
Is that mandated by the mental health code?
It's mandated by the contract of the state of Michigan to the PHPs and the PHP contract to us. It's a shared risk model. The financial risk for expenditures is shared at the state level, the PHP level, and the CMH level. So it's not a mandated model from the federal government, but our model to share the financial burden of unexpected Medicaid expenditures at the state, that which is MDHHS. Because remember, our legislators appropriate enough money, right? So when I say state, I don't mean legislators. I mean the department, okay? So it's a risk model that we have.
So the question is, if the RFP goes ahead and moves to a different model, is that ISF
It would
go there?
No, what would happen is all the Medicaid funding would go to the new region for the new thing, and we'd be doing a reset. And we would have to determine if there is the need for a CMH to have an ISF, Internal Service Fund of Medicaid, because we wouldn't be co-managers.
Gotcha.
In fact, I would not be having the discussion about the items that are in red in front of you at all. They are almost 100% contract providers for us co-managing the Medicaid. If it goes through without changes, then I wouldn't be managing residential. I wouldn't be managing individual budgets for self-directed care. I would be a provider saying, dear region, we'll do this service. How much are you going to give us to do it? This would not be an issue. There'd be no county of financial responsibility on the Medicaid side. On the Medicaid side at all. It would move to regional financial responsibility with a far bigger region. So the implications, if you're the state, and you know that out of the 10 PHPs, 9 of them are in deficits, only one isn't, you might want to reset the whole table to kind of fix that. Because you have to drill down to figure out what's going on. There was only one PHP that reported a surplus. And guess what? They're a needs-based model of distributing with their, interesting. So related to this, on the expenditure side, we have to do a better forecasting. We've done very robust ways to look at our utilization management system here. So one of the first things we did is in 2025, because we already knew we had a deficit from last year and the trending continues, we did a hiring freeze and position control of the things that we control. Now, it's not like I didn't fill positions, but we didn't fill nearly all of our vacancies or even new positions. We went to the county commissioners and said, could we have new 6 positions for this year? We fill 2, right? But that led to a savings of at least $670,000, $678,000. Other administrative stuff within our control and other contracts in our control, we had another $422,000 to a total savings of things in our control of $1.1 million in 2025. We will continue with those methodologies in this fiscal year. Do we need to fill positions? Can we make gains in efficiencies? And I've been very proud of the Ottawa CMH staff and their ability to continue to provide services when there's an increase in demand with the same or less resources. So our deficit is almost, not totally, almost exclusively related to the need for services that our contract providers provide. And as you heard, without any real rate increases for them, except for new people coming in on the residential side. And so we're holding fast on areas that I think we have the most control over. We also developed and implemented a specialized residential services utilization management committee. We're looking at all requests or all other options been tried before they're placed in residential, working with the families before that. We have over 50 people that would like residential services that at this time their families and supports are hanging on, but we're keeping track of them. Everybody that needs a level of care that's medically necessary, that can't be handled by natural supports, we must provide. We can't say, well, now we don't have the money for that, okay? We also developed and implemented a rate setting and contract committee that looks at all of our rates. We started with residential, developed a new level of care system, a new decision tree on which level of care to go into, a new rate calculator to calculate rates, and you've heard about those processes. That took a year to develop because it was done in partnership with the providers, us, our staff, and what we know about the residents. So we didn't just say, well, you know, we got to give rate increases. We did it in a very methodical way, and I have not, even though this board has approved the new rate ranges that we have based on the level of care, I have not increased with the exception of Harbor House, which we did an emergency increase because of they were going to go under in July, if not. And so besides a new person coming in, over 200 of our folks are still on the old rate system, needing a rate increase, and we're moving slowly because if you're already in a deficit, you have to make the world know what you're about to do. And I've been working hand in hand with the region for them to know that. The regional entity, using our model, has developed their own residential rate calculator. This is good news. They rolled it out for the CEOs to look at last week. It has the same variables that are in my rate calculator. So now I'm looking at the difference between what their rates would be in their calculator and mine. And we'll be working with the region to do that so that we can have a regional specialized residential rate. That's the first time in a while we've had any talk of centralization of rates at the regional level besides inpatient. Our inpatient expenditures went out because we had an increase in utilization and the actual cost of the contracts, which the region negotiates for us. So I listed them there, the measures that we were doing. And, you know, one of the biggest things that we were able to do is implement a new EMR. And we keep saying that all the time. It just started in June. It's allowing us to understand our authorizations, our expenditures, our processes far better than we had. And it's in line with other CMHs. And that just happened in June. So we only had a couple of months of that in the fiscal year to look at that. In December, you're going to get at the Finance Committee and then through here, an analysis on how I intend to manage CCBHC revenue and expenditures. The CCBHC funding source does play into this, where how you allocate expenses does impact the Medicaid side. We're still getting to the bottom of the full impact of what happened in the last year with CCBHC, but I can tell you, we didn't even know what the rate we're going to get for revenue was until like 2 weeks ago, and the fiscal year was already ended. So we had to go back all through last fiscal year and recalculate revenue based on what they were going to give us now, known as the PPS1 rate. I intend to go in depth with this in December in finance, and then the full board will be seeing that. We need a CCBHC managed care model. Anna Bednarik, my staff, and others are working on that because any expenditure that doesn't meet revenue, we're fully at risk for, meaning there's no risk pool, Director Davis, like I just illustrated with Medicaid. we as a CMH and as a county would be at full financial risk of making up any expenditures, and we'd have to use local sources like millage, fees, and if allowable, and I don't know if it's allowable, county general fund to make that up. There's a real, so with CCBHC, just know that has some of the interplay on revenue projections overall and expenditure, but we're looking into that and we're working on a fundamental change in how we monitor it. We've already developed a couple new dashboards that tell our staff, you have to have so many of these encounters and we're not going to meet our revenue targets. We've already developed that. It's already been implemented. You'll see those and kind of our forecasting with that. For the first time, we had what's called DCOs or contract providers helping us deliver CCBHC services, and the revenue of that starting to come in. So CCBHC utilization management plan, all of that, we rolled out in December. They're on the third manual of this program. They keep changing the rules of this funding source over and over again. And so we believe we know enough now to let this board know, yes, we can manage it effectively. Or no, we're at risk for certain things and we have to mitigate that risk. The CCBHC program has put in millions of dollars of revenue for us to deliver services. And it's important that we understand that, and I'll be dealing with that next month. So I go through all this so that when you get to the finance committee, you can realize we spent 2.5 hours talking about these things. But I thought I owed it to the full board and not put it on the chair of the finance committee to explain what we're doing, because Vonnie, quite frankly, this changes every minute. Like I bet you the time I get back to my office, there'll be a new revenue projection, hopefully for the better, or things like that, because we're still coming in. I'll take questions on anything that I've talked about for 2025.
I have, and maybe it's more of a comment, but I just want to press into the autism
Yes.
area in particular. So we've been watching for a number of years this exponential rise in autism rates. I mean, it's just been hugely escalating. And so, there's efforts right now to get to the bottom of why is this happening. And so just interestingly, the CDC just changed their website, I think maybe even yesterday, and said that vaccines indeed may cause autism. And this is, one thing that they're researching now at this point. So the reason I bring it up is because we're seeing this exponential rise, like the rates are, I mean, the chart's going like this. I think that we're going to continue to see that cost rising for us. And I would argue for at least the next 5 years, because I think there's probably a number of things contributing to that. But as we get that research done and we figure out exactly what it is, those things aren't going to be removed from children's lives, until it's figured out. And so we have children continuing to experience that causation at this point. So I'm just saying, I think that we need to be planning that that's going to continue to rise for us for at least the next 5 years, if not longer. So, and I don't think that's something that we as a board or you can control. So I just think that has to be on our radar, that particular piece is only gonna.
Yeah, and the trending and knowing that we see that. And I'll remind the board that our access data, once you get past our initial screening, 91% of folks that are seeking autism services get served.
Yeah.
And so the front door, it's not wide open, but the need is so great that it continues to increase who we're serving, especially in autism.
Yep. Okay, that's all I got on that.
I guess in the same vein, and this might be a moot question because we won't really know how next fiscal year should be relatively normal, but going forward with RFP, we won't know how it'll play out, but we had a $4 to $5 million deficit last year, 3, at least in our control, 1.5 to 3. What is the plan to make that zero?
Well, it's to continue to do the best you can in utilization management to ensure we're not over authorizing. That's one side of that. The plan is not solely, but largely increase in revenue. And I've been able to demonstrate in the last year and 4 months that how dire our lack of Medicaid revenue is. Partner with the region, let the state know this. And it did result with me, not just me, and many partners getting money released. But there has to be one of the major stools is a full court press in revenue for the services that we have, or they're going to have to make changes to the Medicaid benefit. It's so broad and expensive, you can't do that. On our side, it's going to be a full court press on making sure we're doing utilization management correctly, that we have a tool that's precise and has equity in determining the amount of services one should get. And, Chairman Jorgen said this is really something that is in development, and we've had to almost do solely because the state took away the very measure to help us do that for folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And it was called the SIS, Supports Intensity Scale. That was one, not the one variable that help say how much of the service should you authorize. To date, there is no uniform way done in the state to determine that. And I've been in the process of building one, a tool that will assist in that, which should be complete. Probably within the next 2 months, we'll be piloting it to help have uniformity on how much we're authorizing, because there are differences, Director, on who gets how much of what. And it's usually based on medical necessity, but it's not as precise as we need to be. And so we don't have equity in what's being authorized in some of our most expensive areas. And I intend to strengthen that significantly. That will in turn get uniformity in what we're spending. In some cases, it will decrease what we're spending. And when that happens, those families would have a right to appeal that decision and go to a Medicaid fair hearing and to say, well, they didn't do it right, and the judge says restore. So can it get to, I don't ever like to say to you specifically or this board, can I get to zero? I don't think you can get to zero without changes in revenue, but we have to continue to full court press to get to zero and the things that we do control. And I intend to keep doing that. But I cannot tell this board or the county commissioners, I can get it all the way to zero when you're getting reductions in revenue that you don't even know until the end of the fiscal year. And that has to be addressed. There's an advocacy plan within the region we're going to hit in January. We figured nothing can be done until we know what's going on with the system and the holidays end. Me and several partners are getting together with our region, with providers, to approach the state and show them from a data analytics standpoint how this is the issue. So it goes beyond just saying, we don't have enough revenue. Everybody says that, right? And if you're part of a legislature, you hear it all the time, right? So we have to have a way of demonstrating that with metrics and real data. And I've been collecting that for 6 months, easy, to start that. So it's a combination of getting better at utilization management and increasing revenue. But I cannot say that I can bring it to zero within 11 months if the revenue keeps decreasing, because revenue decreases are outpacing expenditure increases. I wish I could say that. And that's the purpose of having an ISF, but you can't go to the well every year. There's got to be a structural change eventually, or you run out of money in the reserve. If we were allowed to save Medicaid dollars, some of these $1.1 million reductions, we could put in our own rainy day fund and have more control over how we're utilizing Medicaid savings if you ever had any, but that's if you had them. In the old days, this is what we used to do. I had my own internal service fund.
I guess the thing that I struggle with is everyone will admit that the landscape and the current system is not sustainable.
Correct.
And the department is trying to make changes
Correct.
in their view to make it more sustainable. But largely, the CMH Association is fighting them tooth and nail at every step. And
Correct.
that's frustrating to me personally, because like you said, I mean, you just said we can't get to zero.
Right.
I mean, I would maybe push back on that. I mean, relying on the state is, I work
Yeah, I
for the
know.
state. It's
Can't be
risky
the plan,
business.
right?
So the reality is what's in our control is in our control.
Mhm.
We can rely on the state to come and bail us out, but eventually they're not going to do it.
Yeah, and your frustration is valid, you don't need me to validate it, but I'll tell you that, we are aware of in the system that radical changes need to happen. How it's done is really the debate. But make no mistake about it, if 9 out of the 10 regional entities are in deficits, right, then something fundamentally is wrong unless they're all mismanaged. Now, luckily, for now, we're in a shared risk model. So when I say go to the state, they have a part in this, like solving deficits part. It isn't just allocating new revenue. They have stuff that they can move around. Because it's a shared risk model, what I'm saying is we're doing our part, the region's doing their part, the state has to do their part. And that's indeed what happens. The state does cost settlement with the regions. So just like we do it with the regions, they do it with the state. But make no mistake about it, the funding model has to change. And if we have to have fundamental change at the PHP level to do it, fine. Just have a way that doesn't sever the CMH's relationship to the point of you're just a provider. If that can be remedied, I think a majority of us are saying, yeah, change is needed. And it is frustrating, especially when you have to manage it at this level. When you're like, well, when you're all deciding to do that, I got to make sure that our constituents get the services that I'm contracted to provide. But I think that it's a warrant and a legitimate statement that you are making about, dear CMHs, if you're saying you're not getting enough revenue and the state's trying to address that, don't stand in the way of that. I would agree with that, as long as the plan doesn't make the CMH Hope Network. Because then our ability to provide services on the mental health code are challenged. And I was the executive vice president there. So I don't say it lightly. I have nothing against Hope Network. I think it's a fine organization. But they're not staying up at night on Friday figuring out how certain people are going to get their services. I am. They're just delivering it. And they're our partner, by the way, a very good partner of ours. But I agree. The state needs to get to zero with us. But I'm not going to tell this board I have a plan to get us to zero. I don't think it's possible. I'm going to do everything I can to get it to zero and stay out of the shared risk. And I was one of, I think we had a second one for the first time, a CEO going to the regional entity last meeting and saying, here's what we're accountable for and here's what we're doing. Partner with us. And we had a very robust discussion at the LRE, probably more than ever. I mean, it's the very intense conversation. But I take that feedback to heart that I'm going to do everything in our control to have equity and fairness in how we authorize services based on real data and empirically validated systems and services, and control the expenditures that we can control, which 1.1 million isn't something to sneeze at when you're already at a deficit.
Okay.
Michael, if I could interject here. We have a number of concepts all interrelated here that we've discussed this morning. One misconception may be the question of profit and loss. There is no profit and loss equation in our system for us.
Right.
We have mandatory expenses that we have to incur in order to provide mandatory services. You are correct that utilization management is a key to doing that efficiently. That's something that you have some control over, but not total control.
Correct.
And we should be doing that regardless of how much, if the LRE gave us twice as much money next year,
Absolutely.
we would still use the same utilization management in allocating services to people based on their need. The area of dispute that comes up is the mental health code says we provide services appropriate to the individual's need. And that's the gray area that the Medicaid fair hearings address effectively or ineffectively, depending on how you look at it. But generally speaking, we don't have the right or the authority to give somebody twice as many services
Correct.
as they need, even if all the money was there. We have restrictions that we have to operate under. If we do that, and my assumption is, and my belief is that you are in fact operating under that dynamic of only approving appropriate services for, now, what the cost of those services are is a separate equation. You can place them in one setting and it costs $100 a day. You could place them in another setting and it costs $150 a day. And then the question comes up is there a difference in the quality of services that would justify that difference in cost? But that's one whole
Yeah.
dynamic we're dealing with.
So
Now,
let me give you an example that's quickly to highlight that. So the Medicaid fair hearing system is broken. We know we have to strengthen it. Let me tell you why. We oppose uniform utilization management kind of processes to say, here's what we're going to offer somebody, right? That individual and or their guardian can say, well, we don't agree with that. We want to appeal it. The region can say, no, Ottawa CMH, this is the appropriate amount, scope, and duration based on how we're looking at this. They can then go to a law judge, and the law judge could say, no, give it to the family or split the cost. We have had instances where that has made some of our individuals costing between $300,000 and $1 million a year to provide their services. And then what it does is once an administrative law judge rules this is allowable, it then gets baked into utilization management strategy. Why? Because people talk to each other. Families go, hey, I got 100 units of this. Wow, all I have to do is appeal. Now, luckily, the majority of folks in Ottawa County and our families are concerned and make sure there's enough resources for everybody. I don't believe people are trying to take advantage of this, but when they have gone through the appeal process, it has increased what's allowable. We have some individual budgets that cost us between $300,000 and $400,000 a year for folks in self-directed care based on their needs. Okay, all you need is 5 of those or 6 of those a year, and there goes your budget. If you have a new people coming in, and then that's the standard, because you do not gain corresponding increases in revenue when you have the amount of people increase come and see you. There's no incentive, unfortunately, for CMH to serve anybody new.
and the ALJ does not take into account
No,
what the region's budget is or what the
Nope.
region is allocated.
they're
to.
blind to it.
Yeah.
Now, this is an issue statewide. We're all dealing with this. You need an appeal process. You need judges. But because the region and the state do not have uniformity in utilization management standards across the state, you've got 10 PHPs and sometimes 46 different CMHs interpreting a little differently. And so the judges are put in this position like, I don't know, right? But this is a problem because I can have a budget all of a sudden increase dramatically when there's been no change in medical condition whatsoever, Chairman Board, but simply an appeal process has happened and the judge says, no, I think you have to give it to them. There's no medical expert in there. We do testimonies and all kinds of stuff, but at the end of the day, it's there. Am I blaming judges? No, it's broken because there isn't uniformity, and maybe the new structure would do that, right? On utilization management. And we're left to balance our budgets. You know, you're a good CMH if you balance your budget. Really? I can't balance my budget by denying care. That'd be easy. Sorry, we're closed. No new people for 6 months. I could balance expenditures quite nicely. Can't do that. So the intent of my director's report, I also put in 26 in here, is that we're also told by the region, it looks like the fiscal year 26 Medicaid revenue projections might be lower than we think it is. And we're still investigating that. So, and that's a result of the number of Medicaid lives, changes in the Medicaid program. We still don't know the impact fully yet, but if we have revisions to that projection, I'll let you know. We were asked to submit a new expense plan. Well, if you have a reduction of, say, 2 million, I'm like, I don't know. I literally wrote, do all of this and get more revenue. Because there isn't corresponding cuts you can make for a decrease in 2.83, 4 point more. And Network 180, it's catastrophic. It's like 15 million. Like, how do you do that? They could cut all of their providers by 10% and not even get close to that. They could lay off all of their administrative staff and it wouldn't even touch that.
Well,
So,
this brings us to another layer. Without dragging this out interminably, we could talk for hours as we've
Yeah.
done in the Finance Committee.
well, I just thought this was a valid discussion of here so that when Vonnie gets to the Finance Committee report, she doesn't have to replicate that whole thing.
Now,
You know.
you talk about a profit and loss.
Mhm.
I would argue that that's irrelevant. If you were a business, yes, where you would look at your income, which you may have some control over by adjusting your pricing, and you look at your expenses, and presumably a good number of them are controllable. But that's an appropriate concept in the business community, and even for county government. You have a way of generating revenue at the county. It either comes as money from appropriation from the legislature, or you have tax income. And you have a budget that you can establish accordingly. If something happens and your tax revenues fall off dramatically and you have a shortfall, what do? Well, you can either cut county services, or you could raise taxes and try to generate more revenue to cover that. We don't have that luxury within our system. So you have an allocation from the LRE that's given to them from Lansing. The LRE tries to use its wisdom in allocating it between the CMHs. So you have an allocation of $80 million, and they're going to hold back 5% of it and put it in the ISF fund, which is our self-insurance fund.
Right.
But it's also not just our self-insurance, it's a pooled self-insurance for the region. So everybody's holdback goes into the pot of ISF that everyone presumably can tap as needed. And then the rest of the money gets allocated to us that we can draw down. That's not our money to take.
Right.
It's only if we have allowable Medicaid expenses to charge off against that allocation.
That's correct.
To
And
the
so
extent that we have greater expenses
Yeah, and
than has
that's
been
the-
allocated.
that's the point. But
Yeah.
I just remind the board that even at a $5 million deficit, you only have to be off by 5%.
Mhm.
See? And so we have to get precision to get like dead on or under every year, right? But if like, oh, in a shared risk model, it's like, you do up to 5% of that and they go, okay, you start to, once you get to like maybe a 10% or more miss in terms of expenditures and revenue, you have to look at even more root causes, but it's not a small amount of dollars.
Okay.
Sorry, just, it seems to like, the two areas that we keep seeing, that we're hit really hard in is residential and autism.
Mhm.
And we know with residential, we haven't even begun to tip,
Right.
how much that actually we should be paying for
Right.
that. But I think it's reassuring. I mean, it's good and it's bad, but we're seeing the same patterns out of other counties as
Yeah.
well. So it's not just us.
Yeah.
But we're seeing that, this is where the need, the biggest need, the biggest surprises are coming from are those two areas, which I think does highlight the fact that we need the state to move to a needs-based model.
Mhm.
Because then you can kind of figure it out, what are the actual needs of each county, instead of going by this model that is just not working.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's precisely the point.
Mhm.
I also think uniformity amongst CMHSPs in terms of how they determine what they need
Mhm.
is going to be incredibly important. And that's part of what's going on in the LRE right now.
Yeah. And I had to develop my own because there wasn't any.
Right.
Now, I have a quick follow-up question, Robert. You asked a question earlier of Michael about the ISF and what happens if the state goes through with 3 regional PIHPs. Does that leftover money in the ISF fund go to the new PIHP? Or, that's our money from our PIHP, which is going to be dissolved. Do we get to keep that and distribute it
It's
to the
unsure at this
existing
point.
5 members?
It's unsure at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll know.
One of the problems with
unsure.
the RFP is that we don't know what the alternative is. We have general ideas of what they would like to do, but we don't know questions like that.
Right.
Right. And so that raises a level of anxiety. It raises a level of uncertainty for people. And so I think those are discussions that the LRE are having right now. How do we stay uniform amongst the 5 of us to be able to advocate for what we need? Because we're still going to be in existence until October. So anyhow, that's.
Any other questions for Michael? Okay, we will move to the consent items on the agenda today. That would be the minutes of our last meeting, the Performance Improvement Committee report, and the amended renewed service contracts and the new service contracts, and then the financial statement that has been submitted through the Finance Committee. Since these involve contracts, we'll entertain a motion and address it with a roll call.
So moved.
Support.
Any specific questions or items that you would like removed from the consent agenda? If not, we'll do roll call.
Director Bunce,
Yes.
Director Davis,
Yes.
Director Rhodey,
Yes.
Director Duff,
Yes.
Director Dritzma,
Yes.
Director Faulkner,
Yes.
Director Van Hoven,
Yes.
Director Vanderswag,
Yes.
Director Wenzel,
Yes.
Chair Bird.
Yes, motion carries. Next is the committee report from PQI.
Okay, PQI committee met on November 10th. And one of the things that's becoming clearer and clearer is that the scope and the amount of things that we look at in the organization is increasing. And there's some discussion, at least informally, going on as to whether the PQI committee will be meeting every month rather than just every other month. And so this month we basically looked at, I'll just give some highlights, okay? The outpatient therapy services rate setting initiative, again, is another area that we really need to look at. We've got about a 25 to 30% no-show rate amongst Medicaid recipients that go into outpatient treatment. Now, what makes that significant? If you had your own business, which I had, if I had someone that didn't show up for an appointment, I could bill them. You cannot bill a Medicaid patient for a no-show. So we have providers that are now kind of deciding that they're no longer going to work with us because it's not sustainable, okay? Michael, maybe you could talk a little bit more about that if you'd like, but the bottom line is we now have an initiative where we're looking at what can we do to shore that up and to also get a better understanding of how we can have our no-show rate decrease as part of that initiative.
Yeah, I would just say that the video of that committee has a presentation I did on that with attachments, so you can watch that and reach out if you have questions.
And then the second thing is they're looking at reintroducing or re-implementing the distinctive illness management recovery program for our clients that have varying levels of compliance across populations. It is an evidence-based model that helps us increase adherence to treatment, basically. And so that's a really good thing for us to be looking at, so that we're becoming better and better incrementally at being sure that our clients are receiving the appropriate levels of care and that they're utilizing those appropriate levels of care. That's correct. Right? Okay. In terms of new business, we always look at the access and crisis utilization report. Notable about that this year, we're continuing to see a tick up in inpatient hospitalizations. So the committee is now looking at, the staff is now looking at, are those folks that are currently receiving services or those new folks coming into the system that are needing hospitalizations? Because if there are folks that are currently receiving services, we need to look at how is it that they're escalating to inpatient hospitalization. And we know that inpatient hospitalization is one of our highest cost measures. So we have to do a deep dive in regards to that kind of stuff. Anna talked about the dashboard. Notable, Michael talked, Medicaid enrollment is decreasing. So we're going to be getting less revenue unless we can change to a needs-based system. And so that's something for us to look at. And then, of course, the PI plan was presented by Anna. And while I appreciate it being presented, the fact that you have 9 auditing agencies or accreditation agencies looking at you tells me that you're probably doing a good job in regards to things. So I would encourage us to support that moving forward. We also had a nice presentation by the System of Care Grant Overview people by Katie Klossing and Jennifer Borman. This is a program funded by SAMHSA, which supports mental health outcomes for children with severe emotional disturbance. It fills in service gaps that we may have in regards to things. So they've been reaching out to schools and a number of other programs. They've been reaching out to parents of children with SED to see what they can do to help them feel supported in working on the system. So as I said, we're getting a broader and broader view of the organization, and we're going to be reviewing more and more just to make sure that we're continuing to improve our services, which should and will always be an ongoing process that we have. So, and there's a link if you'd like to look at the meeting. Any questions? Good.
Okay, Vonnie is next with the Finance Committee report.
Oh, thank you. The Finance Committee met on Monday, the 17th, as we usually do, just prior to this meeting. In addition to everything Michael already shared, I'll just hit the things that we discussed. And one of them was, you've been made aware of the region's efforts to create a rate calculator for residential services. And now this process is completed. However, all of the regional partners have not at this point agreed to use that. And as you also know, Dr. Brashears and the team have created an Ottawa calculator. And now what the next step as far as all of that goes, they're looking at making a comparison between what the regional calculator would mean for those residential services versus what our current calculator, and just look at those differences as we move forward. Your attachment A, amended and renewed contracts. There were 6 renewals and 2 that were amended due to rate adjustments. Then attachment B was looking at new contracts, and primarily some of those were autism services, new providers to be able to meet the number of needs we have in that area. And also, when was it again? Hold on. Looking at changing the Parent Cafe program from a direct service to contract. So that was that last contract. And then we looked at the financial statement, attachment C, we reviewed that, and yeah, had some pretty extensive discussion around just the whole financial picture right now. And I think, is there anyone else from the committee who could add to what I presented? Any questions?
Based on what you and Michael have said, I think we've kind of.
No, we've
Yeah.
talked about it a bit, haven't we, Bob? So thank you.
Okay, we have no presentation today. That's correct. So the next item is old business. We have none. New business. Do we have any new business to present to the board today? None that we are aware of. So then we have general information, comments, and meetings attended. A number of our board members attended the association meeting. It'd be interesting to hear any comments you might have.
I'll start. It was a blast. Is that the right word, guys? Blast? It was just really informative. One thing I do want to say, the last session that I went to was on mental health and social media. Who was in there with it? Yeah. I am 100% convinced that this thing right here, because the presentation was all about social media, and that, I'm gonna just read a couple of my notes if you don't mind, because we got lots of time. The average time spent on social media is 6 hours and 31 minutes. And at 2 hours, you're proven to feel experiences of sadness. So if we're spending 6.5 hours on social media, there's a big reason why people are feeling sad. And if you visit that social media site 58 times or more per week, that you are 3 times more likely to have perceived social isolation. So if you already experience FOMO, it's a real thing, you are going to really have FOMO, that you're missing out on life. And our teenagers feel that in a huge way, right? So that FOMO and isolation and loneliness is super, super real. Social media and neurological impact equal brain rot. The presenter is from Eaton County, and I'm going to probably reach out to her myself to come to Compassionate Heart and talk to parents about social media and the impact that it has, especially on our teens and young adults who have developmental disabilities. So that was probably my most impactful lesson of the day, was that one. And I don't know if you guys who sat where they want to share anything, but we're not letting our brains work. We're letting this thing do all of our work for us, because we can look up anything immediately that we want to know, and it's not helpful. I personally have banned phones at Compassionate Heart because I was watching kids not interact and build friendships, and that's what we're there to do, build friendships and relationships. So unless they use it as a tool for their language skills, I've banned phones. And within a short time, I saw people who would sit in a chair the whole time now actually interacting with other people. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to have gone to that weekend, got to know people a little bit more, and it was a really great time. So thank you for the opportunity to go, and let us be blessed with that. And then I think I just want to talk just a tad into the whole conversation earlier. I think my role on this board is I'm the practical, I live in the trenches. I live it every day with my own son and with all of my friends. And I listen to Krista because I know that she lives it too. I know Beth has a son with autism. It is not right that we can't care for our people right here in Ottawa County. That is not okay. I'm gonna be super honest, I could not be more disappointed in the state of Michigan. I'm sorry that that's your employer, but I could not be more disappointed. I don't know. Anyway, I could not be more disappointed I could not be more disappointed in the state for a lot of reasons, even earlier this week with the Michigan Department of Education. I live here every day, and there are so many people and parents and families behind those faces that Krista meets, I meet, maybe there's others here, and that we can't take care of them. It just hurts me to the core. The 90-year-old grandfather who presented to us a few months ago, right? Like 90. if I live to be 90, I hope that my son Jacob is being taken care of and I don't have to have my 3 other children worry about that. So we are at a really, really hard place, and it just hurts my heart that that Lansing, like if I could go there and just say, this is real life. I don't know that they care. I don't know that they listen. I don't know. I don't know them, but that's my perception. So I just want to say thank you for just being in it. I don't know how hard that is every day. And like you said, you're probably gonna go back to your office and something will change again. And that's not fair to parents like me, to Krista, to Beth. It's not fair to have to live life like that every day. Like, I don't know, Jake. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So thank you.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on that, that social media class, something everybody should have, that school should have that lady come and speak, so you can see the data on it, instead of trying to keep improving things that we really know where it lies, where a lot of it starts from.
Mhm.
And the disappointment in the state of Michigan this week too, when we're fighting for our kids and fighting for monies, but we can rest assured they're going to be taught sex ed in the DD and autism population. That's the last thing I need in my child's life. And I need someone to listen to that.
100%. I remember I shared with someone from the OEI school board 2 years ago when they approved this. I said, I need my son to match his clothes. I need him to brush his teeth and to just be kind. That's what I'm working at. That sounds so simple, but that's the truth. When I pick him up and he's got pink shirt with, red shorts, I'm like, buddy, doesn't quite work right now. Let's go back and try that again. I know that's for some that just sounds silly, but it's real life. And I just want him to be kind. So to your point, 100%, it's so disappointing that you're not listening to parents who are in the trench every day.
Amen, sister.
Thank you.
I attended the conference as well, and I would encourage anyone who hasn't gone, or even if you have, to go again. There's so much there, and great networking with others. Just was a really nice opportunity. For me, the one sectional that stuck out in my mind was the one dealing with autism, and not only looking at numbers and how things have changed, but looking at practices. And since the insurance legislation in 2012, what all has occurred and how many more practices are being supported. And yeah, I just found that one to be extremely interesting. One of the emphasis was early identification. And that to me is something that we need to not forget about. We need to deal with all ages, but if we can make a difference early in those lives, it is sustainable. So thanks again for the opportunity to go, and encourage you guys to take that opportunity when you have it.
I just wanted to share something on a personal level regarding that class. I'm seeing it in real life, actually. I know individuals closely with children in different age ranges, and one individual doesn't allow, the child has never seen a screen, has never any of that, and the others have, and I see the differences in their personalities and their anxiety, in their everything. And the one individual's learning how to play instruments and going outside and experiencing life, and the others are not. It's crucial that kids do not be on social media. I'm seeing it in real time. And the other personal part was, for me, that all of my classes were amazing, but the fact that we got to know other board members on a personal level was huge. It was invaluable. It was one of the best experiences I've had. So I really enjoyed it.
Anyone else have something to share?
Yeah, I do. I got to go to the LRE meeting yesterday. Michael's already talked about Judge Yates' ruling and where we're at in the RFP process, so I won't I won't belabor that, but during the LRE meeting, both Dr. Bashirs and Krista Mason spoke very eloquently about the consequences of the funding shortfalls to specific programs, specifically in Ottawa County, and frankly, the need for more revenue to continue to serve Ottawa County residents in our residential treatment programs. There was a discussion with Mary Dumas, and the LRE recognized that a standardized rate calculator that we've talked about needs to be uniform across our programs so that we can go to the legislature and say, this is what we need and this is why we need it. And by the way, we need this across the region. So we need everybody working together in regards to that. So I think that, you know, the key being uniformity. I'm hopeful that our other LRE partners who are aligning with some insurance companies to do some of their own requests will continue to work with us going forward in regards to meeting these needs. This is not about money as much as it's about people, the people that we serve. And we had a spirited discussion, probably the most spirited discussion, at least since I've been on the LRE board, and I've heard from others about how we're going about funding these programs and what we need to do in regards to that. And, you know, I was very encouraged. For the first time, we've actually talked about a needs-based model in our region. And I'll be pushing for us to do a feasibility study in regards to what that means. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It'll be a heavy lift. It'll be a heavy lift because in order to change things, you have to have a unanimous approval of all 5 members, according to the bylaws. So there are those who are benefiting by the current model that may have to give up a little. And there are the 2 largest counties, frankly, that are struggling. So it's really about trying to get people together. The encouraging thing is just that there are people from some of the other counties who indicated, you know, we really do need to look at this. And so I'm encouraged. I feel pretty good about that. So that's what went on there. And we'll probably have a different kind of report next time because the December 10th decision will be made. Switching subjects, finally, you all know we have a millage renewal coming up next year. And I have, as a member of PQI, but also having a kind of a good view of what's been going on in terms of data, been talking to some of the staff about collecting data to show how the millage has been effective across our programs. Okay. And my plan is, first of all, need to know that the organization cannot run a campaign. Okay. So I've asked Bonnie and myself, and I'll be asking a few other stakeholders and any of you who want to get behind the millage to work with us to resurrect the Friends of CMH ballot committee. Once that language is presented to the Board of Commissioners and the ballot is set, we'll be trying to raise some money and trying to develop a strategy to pass the millage. So just wanted to bring that up so that you all know that we haven't forgotten about that. And so I'm willing to kind of take on some of that responsibility. So, but thank you.
Bob, along with the fact that the agency itself cannot run an advocacy campaign, we also can't spend any money to support an effort to do that. So to the extent that anyone is interested in it, I don't know what expenses might be incurred. There might be some printing cost or something, but that's something that we as individuals could contribute to.
Yeah, there will definitely need to be some fundraising that'll go on, and there'll be some pleas out for that. You know, interestingly, printing costs are significantly higher because a lot of that material comes from Canada now. And we know what's happening with tariffs with Canada. So we're going to probably anticipate a much higher a much higher cost than it was last time. Well, it was 10 years ago. So inflation in and of itself is going to make for a difference. So there'll be some opportunities for people to donate either time or money. We could use either one of those. So, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. Anyone else have something to contribute or mention?
Don't we have printing in the US?
We do, but I would tell you that one of my neighbors ran an apparel company and just sold it, and he's very glad that he sold it because buying a hat that's manufactured in the US is about $8 more than it would be if we got it somewhere else. So yes, we do have in US, but US, the cost comes from where that US manufacturer, right, gets their materials from. And Canada gives us a tremendous amount of paper and lumber. So we may be able to do some more of that in the US, but yes, you're right.
Okay. If there is nothing else, we have another opportunity for public comment. Just as an anecdote, Barbara Lee, the benches that you're putting in, can they be cell phone free benches to seriously?
I mean, the whole point is that people need interaction with other people, not with screens. Absolutely.
Anyone else wish to contribute with public comments?
Rosalie Austin, City of Holland. 1996 is when the Public Mental Health Code adopted person-centered planning, which is used in conjunction to develop the individualized plan of service, which with self-direction that develops your budget to meet the needs in the plan. So to balance that with utilization management is kind of contradictory, but that is the law, that is the code, and that's self-direction does work. If you balance the cost between residential or any other placement, hospitalization, that it is an option available to people that's not well known, but it works. And then I went to the waiver conference too. It was CM, and it was nice to see a lot of people there. And it's talked about the Michigans and the new assessment, WODAS, and how that's going to throw another training and people got to adopt that. And it should be cost for service, though that should come back because, yeah, the budget deficit is concerning, but the intensity and severity is only increasing. A lot of these people are discharged or not even accepted into hospitalization if within IDD. And what do we do? Where do we go? So, yeah, and it's costly, all right, but I don't have the answer about the budgets, but.
Thank you, Rosalie.
I would just say to the board that Ottawa County, we have the highest percentage of folks in self-directed care in the region. And that's a good thing.
A good thing.
That's not a bad thing. And hopefully I wasn't suggesting it was a bad thing, but we have taken self-directed care here in Ottawa County. We have 21% of all of our folks, 158 families or consumers are on it. And by percentage, that's the largest of anybody in our region by percentage, maybe in the state, but I haven't checked all of the CMHs yet. So, and it is based on what was said, but I just wanted to highlight that. Hopefully my comments weren't misconstrued of, I'm not in support of it. We're not only doing more of it, it does create tensions between person-centered planning, medical necessity, and utilization management for sure. But hey, let's work that out.
There's also a correlation between the need for self-directed services and the lack of programs that we offer or have available within the system to provide services. So in the absence of an alternative systemic approach, families are faced with self-determination in order to get appropriate services. Okay, any other comments? If not, we will consider a motion to adjourn the meeting. Thank you. No objections, we will adjourn. Thank you.